The day I found that plastic piggy bank sitting on my kitchen table, I knew my stepson had made his final move. 30 years of building my pig farm from nothing, blood, sweat, and too many sleepless nights during farrowing season, gone in less than a month. $3 million, 200 acres of prime Kentucky farmland, 6 state-of-the-art barns, and a breeding program that had put Wilkinson Farms on the map. All of it traded away for quick cash. And all he left me was this cheap plastic toy with a note taped to the bottom. "Thanks for the inheritance, old man." I never thought I'd be 70 years old and starting over, but that's exactly where I am. My name is Frank Wilkinson, and I made the biggest mistake of my life when I signed over my legacy to the one person who never deserved it. I just wanted to do right by him, to finally be the father figure he needed. Instead, I learned the hardest lesson about family and trust a man could ever face. I wasn't always a pig farmer. Back in my 20s, I was a construction worker with calloused hands and simple dreams. That changed when I met Martha at the Boone County Fair in '85. She was selling homemade apple butter at her family's stand, her blonde hair catching the late summer light. Martha had a young son, Ethan, just 5 years old then. His father had abandoned them when Martha was 7 months pregnant. When Martha and I married a year later, I promised her I'd give them both stability. We bought a small plot of land outside of Lexington with the little savings I had. 10 acres, a dilapidated farmhouse, and a dream. Martha suggested pigs. Her grandfather had raised them, and she knew the basics. We started with just 4 sows and a boar, living paycheck to paycheck while I still worked construction. Ethan was a difficult child from the beginning. I remember his first day at our new school when he was sent home for pushing another boy off the playground equipment. "He's just adjusting," Martha would say. "He needs patience." And God knows I tried. When he was 8, I taught him to feed the piglets, hoping he'd connect with the farm. Instead, he accidentally left the pen open, and we spent the whole night searching for escaped piglets in the pouring Kentucky rain. As a teenager, Ethan grew more distant. While local farm kids joined 4-H and helped their families, Ethan refused to touch a pitchfork or help with chores. "This stinkin' pig shit is your dream, not mine," he'd say. Martha always defended him. "He's creative, Frank. He's meant for different things." By then, Wilkinson Farms was growing. I'd taken courses at the Agricultural Extension Office, invested in better breeding stock, and built our first real barn. When Ethan was 16, I caught him trying to sell one of our prize gilts to the neighboring farm for pocket money. When I confronted him, he spat in my face. "You're not my real dad anyway," he said. Martha called it teenage rebellion, but I saw something colder in his eyes. The worst came during Martha's funeral in 2015. She'd fought ovarian cancer for 3 years, and I'd mortgaged part of the farm to pay for treatments in Louisville. Ethan showed up late to the service, reeking of whiskey. He didn't speak to me once, not even when I stood alone by her grave after everyone had left. The next day, he asked about his mother's life insurance and seemed disappointed when I told him she'd used it to pay for her own funeral arrangements. After Martha died, I threw myself into the farm. Those pigs became my life, my family. By 2020, Wilkinson Farms had become one of the most respected heritage breed operations in the state. We specialized in rare breeds like Gloucestershire Old Spots and Mulefoots. Our pork was served in restaurants as far away as Chicago and Nashville. I'd built something I was proud of, something Martha would have been proud of too. Ethan drifted in and out of my life over those years, always when he needed money. A failed business venture in Cincinnati, gambling debts in Indiana, a messy divorce in Tennessee. Each time I helped him, remembering my promise to Martha. Family is family, I'd tell myself, writing another check. Last Christmas, Ethan showed up at the farm for the first time in 3 years. He brought his new girlfriend, Vanessa, a woman half his age, with long nails and a way of looking at the house farm like it was beneath her. "Nice to finally see where all the money comes from," she said, eyeing the property. That night, Ethan sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same table his mother and I had bought at a yard sale 40 years earlier. "You're getting old, Frank," he said, using my first name as he always did.
Ever think about what happens to all this when you're gone? I had thought about it. Every day since Martha died, I'd wondered what would become of Wilkinson Farms. I had no children of my own, no siblings with kids who might want to learn the business. All I had was Ethan, Martha's son. And despite everything, I wanted to believe that somewhere inside him was the boy I'd tried to raise. "Actually," I said, "I've been thinking about making a grand gesture, something your mother would have wanted." Ethan's face changed when I mentioned the grand gesture. For the first time in years, he looked at me with something other than contempt, something like interest. He started visiting more often after that Christmas dinner, sometimes with Vanessa, sometimes alone. He'd ask questions about the farm operations, the breeding program, our distribution channels. I started to believe he might actually care. By February, he was showing up weekly, even offering to help with small tasks. "Just trying to learn the ropes," he'd say, "getting to know what Mom was so proud of." Those words were like balm to my old heart. Martha had always believed Ethan would come around someday. Maybe she'd been right all along. In March, I invited Ethan to attend the Kentucky Heritage Livestock Association's annual meeting with me. To my surprise, he agreed. We drove together in my old truck, and I introduced him to everyone as my son. The pride in my voice wasn't forced. That evening, during the award ceremony, Wilkinson Farms received recognition for our conservation work with rare pig breeds. As I stood to accept the plaque, I spontaneously called Ethan up to join me. "This farm's future," I said into the microphone, my voice cracking with emotion. The applause felt like a blessing on what I was planning to do. On the drive home, Ethan was unusually talkative. "You know, Frank, I've been thinking, maybe I've been too harsh all these years. Maybe there's something to this farming life after all." He paused. "That banker, Jim Thompson, he mentioned the farm's value. $3 million, he said. That's quite a legacy you've built." I should have recognized the gleam in his eye for what it was. Instead, I saw what I wanted to see, a prodigal son returning home. April arrived, bringing with it the annual Wilkinson family pig roast, a tradition Martha and I had started 15 years earlier. We'd invite neighbors, clients, and friends from across the county for food and fellowship. This year would be special. I planned to announce my decision to transfer ownership of the farm to Ethan. I spent weeks preparing. The farm had never looked better. The white fences freshly painted, the barns immaculate, the heritage pigs glossy and healthy in their pastures. I even had new business cards printed, Wilkinson & Son Family Farms. I kept them hidden in my desk drawer, imagining the moment I'd present them to Ethan. The morning of the pig roast dawned clear and warm, perfect Kentucky spring weather. Ethan arrived early with Vanessa, who seemed more engaged than usual, asking questions about the farm's finances that I mistook for genuine interest. "So the meat distribution business, that's all paid for, right? No outstanding loans?" she asked, while helping arrange folding tables. "This farm's been debt-free for 5 years now," I said proudly. "That was always my goal, to build something solid that could be passed down without burden." By noon, the farm was filled with guests. Sheriff Miller and his wife brought their famous bourbon baked beans. The Thompsons from the bank came with their grandchildren. Even old Doc Peterson, who'd helped deliver countless piglets over the years, made it out despite his bad hip. Nearly 60 people gathered under the big tent I'd rented for the occasion. As was tradition, I gave a small speech before the meal. Standing there, looking out at familiar faces, people who'd supported Wilkinson Farms through decades of hard work, I felt a fullness in my chest. Ethan stood to my right, freshly shaven in a button-down shirt. I thought I saw Martha in his smile. "Friends and neighbors," I began, 30 years ago, Martha and I started with just a few pigs and a dream. Today, Wilkinson Farms stands as one of Kentucky's premier heritage breeding operations. Approving nods all around. But a man reaches a point in life where he starts thinking about legacy, about what lives on after him. I turned to Ethan, reaching into my pocket for the envelope containing the ownership transfer documents I'd had my lawyer prepare. Which is why today I'm proud to announce that Wilkinson Farms will be passing to the next generation. The crowd applauds. Someone whistled.
Ethan's eyes widened as I pulled out the envelope. That's when Sheriff Miller's radio crackled to life. He stepped away to answer it, then hurried back, his face grim. He whispered something to his deputy, who immediately stood and moved toward the parking area. "Everything all right, Joe?" I asked, the envelope still in my hand. "Sorry to interrupt, Frank, but we've got reports of Vanessa's ex-boyfriend causing trouble over at the Mackenzie place. Apparently, he's been looking for her, making threats." All eyes turned to Vanessa, who had gone pale. "He's not supposed to know I'm in Kentucky," she whispered. "There's a restraining order." Ethan immediately went to her side. "We should go," he said urgently. "This guy's bad news, Frank. He's already trashed her apartment in Nashville." The celebration mood evaporated. Guests began murmuring, some already gathering their things. Sheriff Miller apologized for the disruption, but said he needed to head over to the Mackenzie farm right away. "Wait," I said, still clutching the envelope. "Ethan, I still need to—" "Later, Frank," he cut me off. "This is serious. We need to get Vanessa somewhere safe." I hesitated, then pressed the envelope into his hand. "Take this. Read it when you're safe. It's the farm, son. I'm signing it over to you. All of it." For a moment, something like genuine emotion crossed his face. He gripped my shoulder. "Thank you," he said quietly. Then he and Vanessa were gone, peeling out of the driveway in his sports car. The pig roast continued, but the heart had gone out of it. I moved mechanically through the motions of hosting, all the while wondering if I'd done the right thing. By sunset, as the last guests departed, I still hadn't heard from Ethan. I told myself he was just making sure Vanessa was safe, that he'd call tomorrow, excited about the future we'd build together. I didn't know then that I'd just given away everything I'd ever built to a man who had been planning his exit all along. For 3 days, I heard nothing from Ethan. My calls went straight to voicemail. I drove past his apartment in Lexington, empty. I told myself he was just lying low because of Vanessa's ex-boyfriend situation. On the 4th morning, Jim Thompson from First Kentucky Bank called. "Frank, I'm confused about something. Did you authorize Ethan to discuss selling the farm?" My blood ran cold. "What?" "He was in yesterday with some realtor from Louisville. Said you'd signed over ownership and were looking to liquidate quickly. Mentioned something about moving to Florida." I hung up and drove straight to the county clerk's office. The transfer documents I'd signed were already registered. Wilkinson Farms belonged to Ethan now, legally and completely. I'd been so eager to make the grand gesture that I hadn't included any conditions or safeguards. My lawyer had advised a gradual transfer with provisions, but I'd overruled him. "Family is family," I'd said. By the time I got home, there was a strange car in my driveway. A woman in a business suit was taking photos of the main barn. "Excuse me," I called out. "This is private property." She turned, smiling professionally. "Mr. Wilkinson, I'm Diane Mercer from Bluegrass Agricultural Properties. Your son hired us to list the farm. I'm just getting preliminary photos for the listing." "Get off my land," I growled, my hands shaking. "Sir, I have authorization from the legal owner." "Get off my land," I roared. And something in my face must have scared her, because she scrambled into her car and left, gravel spraying from her tires. Inside the house, I poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon and tried to think. The phone rang. Jim Thompson again. "Frank, Ethan just applied for a bridge loan against the farm's value, said something about needing quick cash before the sale goes through." That night, I couldn't sleep. I paced the farmhouse, the same floors Martha and I had refinished together decades ago. Every corner held a memory. Martha teaching Ethan to bake bread in the kitchen, the Christmas mornings, the quiet evenings planning the farm's future. I'd built all this for family, for legacy. Now it was being stripped away by the very person I'd wanted to give it to. At dawn, I drove to the Lexington Farmers Market, where we had a standing booth every Saturday. I needed to talk to someone, and Ray Peterson, who managed our booth, had been with the farm for 15 years. But when I arrived, the Wilkinson Farms booth was empty. "Where's Ray?" I asked the honey vendor next to our usual spot. "Called in sick. Some guy was here earlier, said he was the new owner, collected the cash box, and said the booth was being discontinued." Something snapped inside me. I drove straight to the farm supply store where I knew Ethan's buddy Mike worked. Mike had helped Ethan move into his new apartment last year. "Where is he?" I demanded, finding Mike stocking feed bags. Mike wouldn't meet my eyes. "Don't know, Mr. Wilkinson." "Don't lie to me, boy. Where's Ethan?" After some pressure, Mike admitted Ethan and Vanessa had been staying at the Red Roof Inn on the interstate. "They're leaving for Florida tomorrow, got some condo deal lined up in Tampa." I found them in the hotel restaurant, having a late breakfast. Vanessa was wearing new jewelry, expensive jewelry. They both froze when they saw me, Ethan's fork halfway to his mouth. "Frank," he said carefully, "we were going to call you." The restaurant was half full, truckers, families, business travelers, witnesses to what came next. "You're selling my farm?" My voice was quiet, but carried in the sudden silence of our table. "My farm," Ethan corrected, setting down his fork. "And yes, I am. Got 3 offers already." "That farm is my life's work, your mother's dream." Ethan laughed, actually laughed. "Mom hated that farm, all those pigs, the smell, the isolation. She stayed for you, not because she loved it." The words hit me like physical blows. "That's not true." "No? Did you ever notice she always showered twice after helping with the pigs? How she'd make any excuse to go into town? She was miserable out there, Frank." Vanessa shifted uncomfortably. "Ethan, maybe we should." "No," he cut her off. "He needs to hear this. Mom stayed because she felt obligated, because you took us in when Dad left. But she was never happy there." I felt dizzy, decades of memory suddenly questioned. "If that's true, why would I ever sign the farm over to you? Why not just sell it myself?" Ethan smirked. "Because you're a sentimental old fool who wanted to believe I'd suddenly care about your precious pigs. That's why it was so easy." "And the restraining order? Vanessa's dangerous ex?" Vanessa at least had the decency to look embarrassed. "There is no ex-boyfriend," she admitted quietly. "We needed a reason to leave your boring pig roast with the documents," Ethan explained, reaching for his coffee. "The whole sheriff's call was staged. Mike's cousin works dispatch." The realization of how thoroughly I'd been played washed over me like ice water. Sheriff Miller was in on it? No, just the radio call. Small-town politics. Money talks. I thought of all the times I'd helped Ethan,
the checks I'd written, the second chances I'd given, all leading to this betrayal. "You won't get away with this," I said, my voice breaking. "These people know me. No one will buy the farm once they hear what you've done." Ethan leaned forward, his voice low. "The farm's already sold, Frank. Signed the papers this morning. Corporate buyer from out of state. They're going to turn it into one of those factory operations. Tear down your precious heritage breeding barns and put up industrial facilities." Something broke inside me. 30 years of work, gone. The rare breeds I'd fought to preserve, soon to be replaced by commercial lines. Martha's legacy, erased. I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. The entire restaurant was watching now. "You listen to me," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Your mother would be ashamed of you. I gave you everything, a home, opportunities, love, and you've thrown it all away for quick cash." Ethan stood too, his face reddening. "You gave me pig shit and obligation. You were never my father, just some desperate guy who thought he could buy a family." The words hung in the air between us. Then I did something I'd never done before. I reached out and grabbed the lapels of his expensive new jacket, pulling him close. "You're right about one thing," I said, my voice trembling with rage and grief. "I'm not your father. No father of mine would raise such a selfish, empty shell of a man." I released him with a small push. He stumbled back against the table, sending coffee cups crashing to the floor. The manager was approaching now, concern on his face. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you." I held up my hand. "I'm leaving." I turned back to Ethan one last time. "Enjoy Florida. Enjoy your blood money. But remember this, what you've stolen isn't just land and animals. It's history, it's family. It's something you can never buy back." I walked out of that restaurant with my head high, though my heart was breaking. Behind me, I heard Vanessa's nervous laugh. Well, that was dramatic. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Everything I had was gone. I drove home in a daze, the Kentucky countryside blurring through tears I refused to shed.
The farm wasn't just buildings and land. It was my identity. Who was Frank Wilkinson without Wilkinson Farms? When I pulled into the driveway, Ray Peterson's truck was parked by the barn. He emerged when he heard my engine, his weathered face grim. "Heard what happened," he said simply. "Whole county's talking about it." I nodded, unable to speak. "Got the boys here," Ray continued, gesturing toward the barn where I could see shadows moving. "Figured we should secure what we can before the new owners take over." My farm manager had gathered our 5 employees, men who'd worked alongside me for years. They stood awkwardly in the afternoon sun, uncertain but loyal. "Corporate buyers don't take over until next month," Ray explained. "Ethan signed a 30-day transition period. Guess he didn't want to deal with the details." A small mercy. At least I had time to say goodbye properly. That night, the men left, promising to return tomorrow. I sat alone at my kitchen table, the same table where Martha and I had counted our first season's modest profits, where we'd planned expansions, where I'd taught Ethan to write his name. Now it held only a bottle of bourbon and my shattered dreams. A knock at the door startled me. It was Jessica Landon, our veterinarian for the past decade. "Thought you might need company," she said, holding up a casserole dish. "My mama always said bad news goes down better with chicken pot pie." We ate in silence for a while before Jessica spoke. "What will you do now, Frank?" I shook my head. "Haven't thought that far ahead." "The breeding program," Jessica began. "Gone," I cut her off. "Corporate farms don't care about heritage breeds." Jessica set down her fork. "That's not entirely true. I got a call today from a research center in Iowa. They've been following your work with the Mulefoots. They want breeding stock." For the first time, a flicker of something other than despair stirred in me. The Mulefoot pigs were my pride and joy, a critically endangered breed I'd spent 15 years helping to preserve. "The farm's not mine to sell from anymore," I reminded her. "No," Jessica agreed, "but the corporate buyers don't take ownership for 30 days. And technically, the breeding rights to your specific genetic lines aren't real estate. They're intellectual property." The next morning, Jessica returned with Dr. Robert Chen from the Iowa Agricultural Research Foundation. He examined my Mulefoot herd with reverent hands. "Magnificent animals," he murmured. "Your bloodlines could be crucial for preserving the breed." We talked for hours about genetics, conservation, and legacy. By afternoon, we had a plan. The foundation would purchase breeding rights to my Mulefoot line, along with 12 of my best animals. The money wouldn't replace what I'd lost, but it would give me something to start over with. Word spread quickly. By week's end, 3 other conservation organizations had contacted me about different heritage breeds from my farm. What Ethan saw as outdated farming, others recognized as vital preservation work. Meanwhile, the community rallied around me in ways I never expected. Sheriff Miller came personally to apologize for his deputy's role in the radio call deception. The Thompsons from the bank offered me a consulting position with their agricultural loans department. Even the pastor from Martha's church, where I rarely attended, stopped by with a casserole and an offer of a small caretaker's cottage on church property until you get back on your feet. 10 days after Ethan's betrayal, as I was sorting through decades of farm records, deciding what to take and what to leave behind, another unexpected visitor arrived. Vanessa stood nervously on my porch, her designer purse clutched tight against her chest. "Frank," she said, avoiding my eyes, "I came to return something." From her purse, she withdrew a small wooden box I recognized immediately. Martha's jewelry box. Nothing valuable inside, just her mother's cameo and the pearl earrings I'd given her on our 10th anniversary. Family heirlooms. Ethan had apparently taken. "He said I could have it," Vanessa explained, "but it didn't feel right." I accepted the box wordlessly. "There's something else you should know," she continued, still not meeting my gaze. "Ethan's been lying to everyone. The farm didn't sell for $3 million. The corporate buyer backed out when they heard about the family dispute. He sold to a developer for half that, and he's already gambled away nearly $1 million in Atlantic City." She paused. "We're not together anymore." After she left, I opened Martha's jewelry box for the first time in years. Inside, beneath the fake velvet lining, where Martha always hid important papers, I found something unexpected, a sealed envelope with my name on it in her handwriting. The letter inside was dated 3 weeks before her death. "My dearest Frank, if you're reading this, I'm gone, and you finally cleaned out my jewelry box like I asked you to 100 times. Stubborn man. I need to tell you something I couldn't say while I was alive. About Ethan, about why he's so angry. His father didn't abandon us as I've always claimed. I left him, after I found out he was embezzling from his company. Ethan doesn't know this. He grew up believing his father rejected him, and that wound has never healed. I've tried to protect Ethan from the truth, but in doing so, I may have allowed him to become too much like his father, entitled, resentful, always looking for the easy path. For this, I am sorry. The farm was never my dream, it's true. But watching you build something honest and good with your hands, that has been my life's joy. Don't let Ethan's bitterness diminish what you've created. All my love, Martha." I sat with her words for a long time, pieces of the past rearranging themselves in my mind. Martha had carried this secret burden while supporting my dreams, and I had never known. The next day, I called my lawyer. The corporate sale had indeed fallen through, and the developer Ethan sold to had specific plans for the property that required rezoning. My lawyer discovered that the County Planning Commission, where I'd served for 15 years, was unlikely to approve the rezoning if I opposed it. We had leverage. By the third week, I'd negotiated a deal. The developer would keep the southern portion of the property for his luxury homes, but the northern 100 acres, including the original farmhouse and main breeding barn, would return to me, along with a cash settlement. Not the full farm, but enough to continue my conservation work on a smaller scale. The day before the new paperwork was to be signed, a battered pickup truck pulled into my driveway. Ethan stepped out, looking nothing like the slick operator who'd sat across from me at the Red Roof Inn. His designer clothes were gone, replaced by worn jeans and a faded t-shirt. The confident smirk had vanished too. "Frank," he said, his voice hoarse. I stood on the porch, saying nothing. "I fucked up," he continued. "Lost everything. The developers are backing out because of the rezoning issues. The bank's freezing what's left because of fraud allegations. Vanessa's gone." He looked up at me, desperation in his eyes. "I need help." 20 years of cleaning up Ethan's messes flashed through my mind. The endless second chances, the disappointed hope, Martha's letter. "There's a plastic piggy bank on the kitchen table," I said evenly. "Consider it my final gift to you." His face darkened. "You heartless old—" "It's not empty," I interrupted. "There's a bus ticket to Iowa inside, and a letter of introduction to Dr. Chen at the Research Foundation. He's looking for an assistant to help with the mulefoot breeding program. It's hard work, long hours, pig shit everywhere." I met his gaze steadily. "It's the last chance you'll get from me." Ethan stared at me for a long moment, then walked past me into the house. 5 minutes later, he emerged with the piggy bank clutched in his hand. Without another word, he got back in his truck and drove away. Whether to Iowa or to another scheme, I didn't know. And for the first time, I realized it wasn't my responsibility anymore. 2 months later, I stood in my new, smaller barn, watching a Gloucestershire Old Spot sow nurse her newborn piglets. Dr. Chen had helped me establish a satellite conservation program connected to the Iowa Foundation. Jessica had become my partner in the venture, her veterinary expertise complementing my breeding experience. The farmhouse where Martha and I had built our life was still mine. The 100 acres I'd kept were the original core of Wilkinson Farms, enough to continue what mattered most, preserving these rare breeds for future generations. On the wall hung a new sign, Wilkinson Heritage Conservation Farm. Below it, in smaller letters, "In memory of Martha Wilkinson, who knew the value of honest work." Sometimes I think about that plastic piggy bank, the final insult Ethan intended it to be. How fitting that such a childish gesture should mark the end of our relationship. I've heard rumors that he actually went to Iowa, that he's working with the foundation. Part of me hopes it's true, that maybe, at 47, he's finally growing up. But I don't dwell on it.
The past is written, but the future, like these newborn piglets taking their first wobbly steps, is full of possibilities I never imagined at 68 years old. Looking back now, I sometimes wonder if I should thank Ethan for what happened. Not for the betrayal, that cut deep and always will, but for forcing me to redefine myself when I thought my story was already written. At 68, I discovered I wasn't just a pig farmer. I was a conservationist, a mentor, a man who could lose everything and still find purpose. The new Wilkinson Heritage Conservation Farm hosts school groups now. Children from across Kentucky come to learn about sustainable agriculture and endangered livestock breeds. When I see their faces light up as a mulefoot piglet nuzzles their hands, I know this smaller dream might actually reach further than my original one ever could. Martha's letter sits framed on my bedside table. A reminder that the people we love can keep secrets, even with the best intentions. That understanding can come too late, but still be valuable. And that sometimes the dreams we build for others matter more than the ones we build for ourselves. If there's one thing I've learned from all this, it's that legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what lives on through your actions, not in barns or bank accounts, but in the values you uphold when everything else is stripped away. Thanks for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss my next video. And if you've ever had to start over when you thought you were done, share your experience in the comments below. Sometimes the most important journeys begin when we think the road has ended.